I I think it would be precipitous of me to try to deliver some kind of, all-encompassing eulogy for him. So I'll just say the first things that came to my mind when I heard that he was gone. The things that to me defined or helped define what I loved about his work. And the first of these was that David Lynch understood America as well as any artist has ever understood America, which, was building and building through his entire filmography. But then Twin Peaks The Return makes it pretty hard to ignore. And I take it I don't need to explain that very much to this audience. The second thing is that he had an unmediated access to his imagination or subconscious or dream life or whatever you want to call it that is extraordinarily rare even in the best artists. And when I say unmediated access to his imagination, I'm not just saying, oh, he was a cool, lucky freak who did these things because, he was born with a special ability. Not at all. It takes an enormous fucking amount of courage, first of all, to see what's in there, to see what images do play on the back of your eyelids, and then to show them to people, and to do it without any ironic distance, any mechanism whereby you could detach yourself or de-implicate yourself from what it is that's being shown on screen. There is always this temptation to do something that you think is, good or big or meaningful. And then you watch it again or you hear it again, whatever, and you kind of stew on it. And eventually you think, nah, I got to put some kind of ironic, metatextual frame around this, because what if it doesn't hit anyone else the way it hits me? And then they're going to need some kind of, hermeneutic framework to explain why it's in the movie. David Lynch never fucking did that. Ever. He showed you what he saw. And in addition to the courage, the bravery of that, it also entails a respect for a generosity toward the audience, because ironize things, distance things, and you give everybody easy talking points for what it is that you're supposedly about, right? And anyone anywhere can come up with enough sets of references and allusions to try to write a critical essay that argues that this film is actually about blah, blah, blah. And of course, they can still do that. But the generosity, in David Lynch's work is for him to present these things. And in their presentation, through that total lack of irony or distance, to tell the audience, you are seeing what you're seeing. There is no allegorical code here. There's no fucking decoder ring that would make this a rational statement, a grammatically correct sentence. There is nothing you have to know except what you're seeing right in front of your eyes right now. And there is absolutely no distance or difference in validity what you are getting between what you get just by watching it and the most, footnoted grad student essay on earth. That's not better than you. Those people don't understand it better than you. It's just different. And a lot of my favorite artists of all time, even if they are dense with references and allusions, this is something they do. They just give you what they're working on. They do not sort of require a fucking entrance test for you to be able to read or to watch or to listen to. Now, maybe it's complicated. Maybe it's going to take you a while to figure out what's going on. Maybe there are some things, outside the artwork that would be really helpful to understand. But none of it is in this bullshit condescending platform whereby people who watch the movie, who listen to the music, who read the book can tell immediately, oh yeah, this was written for academics. This was written for critics to dissect. And that's all those guys do for a living. So what hope do I have of understanding it? So fuck it. Lynch never, ever, ever did that. All of his work says the same thing from, an authorial point of view, which is that the movie is about whatever you're seeing. And what you see is something that is yours. And of course it can be, melded and mixed and annealed and alchemized with other things, with what other people see. Sure, that's good. But there is no primacy to some secret, academic meaning. What you're seeing and getting out of this is exactly as valid and exactly as real as what anyone else sees. And that is that combination of bravery to just do it and then generosity to, tell the audience over and over again, what is this movie about? It's about what you're watching. That's it. And if no one's watching it, it's not a movie. So you are an equal partner in whatever is going on here. Not all of my favorite art, but almost all of my favorite art has something of that generosity in it to say, just dive in and get what you get. Every time anyone asks me about approaching something difficult, Ulysses or Gravity's Rainbow or whatever, I always tell them the same thing, which is just read it. Just read the fucking thing. And you will get what you get now. And then when you read it again later, you'll get more. And you'll get more. And you may even revise or, contradict some of your earlier impressions. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If you still have all the same thoughts about something 15 years apart, that's a bad sign for you, not for the thing itself. And that was something to me that always just radiated from Lynch's movies. As truly horrifying as they could be, I think Fire Walk with Me is, to me, absolutely more viscerally frightening than any straight up horror movie ever made. There is this continual insistence on Lynch's part by just showing you things that these are for you to see. These are not for me to construct, some cute little critique or jump on the wave of some theory bullshit that's popular right now, or because I want to be congratulated 20 years later for how I made this perfect little chess game of a movie. No, it's for people to watch. And the watching and the making are inextricable from each other. And this is the way I feel about almost all my favorite books, almost all my favorite music. The combination of not censoring the how should I say? Because it doesn't have to be imagery, right? It can be anything. But not self-censoring whatever is most alive in your mind when you make that thing, whether by changing it or by ironizing it, all the means we have to distance ourselves from actually fucking meaning anything. The refusal to do that and the insistence that not only is this what I mean, I might not know what it entails. I can't explain it to you, but I know it's what I mean. And when you look at it, you will derive something that is what you mean. And that's what this entire fucking thing is for. To take the word, of a book, of a film, of music, and to make it flesh in the mind of someone else. To create the alchemical index along that cortical interface. Other than that, who gives a fuck? Who cares? That just sort of radiates out of all David Lynch to me. I would also say third, and this is something I look for in most art as well, he actually gives you a world of things, of objects. So much fiction of any kind is just set up with an environment that from the moment where people live or whatever has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the book, the movie. It doesn't matter where the fuck they are. They could be in Kuala Lumpur. They could be in Peoria, Illinois. Lynch, I think, was, I don't know about one of the first, and I would say to this point, the best filmmaker in terms of including the actual objects that we live among that exert enormous influence over us. To ask, what is it to be surrounded by industrial machinery all the time? What is it to live in a society where the sort of centralized labor force necessary for that industrial machinery means all the little neighborhood shit, the world of going to the corner store to buy 3 apples or whatever is fucking dead. What does it mean to live in a world of video and audio recording, which is a huge thing in Lost Highway? And one of the things I want to follow up that Burroughs show about recording with. What does it mean? What is it doing to us that arguably the average person experiences more pre-recorded things than actual attentive life? You are going to hear the voices of more people, many of them dead, trapped in the form of air moving that creates an electromagnetic charge on a piece of tape. You're going to hear that more than you're going to hear actual people talking to you. Good, bad, I think one can probably guess, but it's also not, it's not an ideologue's point. It is simply proposing this thing that so many other artists, I would say the vast majority of them, act like is not even there, right? It's either a shitty conceptual art piece that is quote unquote about the internet, or it's something that, other than, stylistic transmutations over the years, could have been painted 1,000 fucking years ago for all that it actually has to do with the world around it, right? And I will get much more into that when I do the shows on those 2 movies, on Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive. And the fourth thing that it felt important to mention right now is that so I'm so fucking old that I still think of like people who were in their early 20s as using Tumblr. That shit hasn't existed for years. I am 44,000 years old. You have to bear this in mind. And it was, I think it was right around the age that I was young that there came to be this sort of stereotype of the art school Tumblr girl who loves Twin Peaks. So much then that there was a backlash against it. But it's always fascinated me that of all the artists I can think of who are working in that experimental a mode and can actually get their shit distributed, can actually get it put in theaters. I think just anecdotally and from what I have seen elsewhere, that David Lynch overwhelmingly has the largest percentage of female fans. And I don't think that's an accident, because I think Lynch's work, you could say in its entirety, or you could say from Blue Velvet onward or whatever, although it gets more and more concentrated, I would say from roughly Lost Highway until Twin Peaks: The Return. Lynch's work, among other things, is the most harrowing autopsy of male possessiveness in this culture that any artist has ever dared to dive that deep into. That is one of the absolute core themes of certainly everything he did from the 90s on, and you can see it before that as well, too. The fact that we live in a world where women can never just do or be or say anything, because women are fucking crippled under the weight of insane male projection. And, you know, I hesitate to talk about what it's like to be a girl because I don't know, but I can tell you what I've seen among the women that I have been close to, that they are just worn down by how much is not even expected of them would not be exactly right. Because if something is expected of you, that means you at least know what the fuck it is, you know, and what to do about it. And instead, a woman in the West, maybe it's different elsewhere, I kind of doubt it, but a woman in the West at a very, very young age, like a criminally young age most of the time, begins to absorb the malignant fucking radiation of the purposes that men want her to serve. And there are a lot of men, and they've got a lot of different purposes. And those projections cause those men to willfully and violently interpret whatever it is that a woman does as a message to them, right? As either the acceptance or the denial of this imaginary fucking insane protocol they have projected onto women. This is part of where the idea of the iconosphere first hit me, of real living women you can't say having their souls stolen, because that makes it sound like they don't have souls, but real living women having some of their life taken away from them so that they can be converted into iconography for men either to worship or to hate, or usually both in tandem. And that anything the real person does that deviates from the, you know, parameters of that iconography it's construed as a sin, as a crime, and so often as a specific message to a specific person, when the actual act had nothing to do with any of that. The late 80s, early 90s, I can't remember whose joke this was originally, but it was kind of a stock stand-up comedy line for black comedians to talk about getting arrested for driving while black. And women in this culture anyway are constantly on the point of getting arrested or worse for talking while being women, acting while being women, thinking while being women, because they are trapped in the center of this horrific wasp's nest of demands from people to whom they owe fucking nothing. And there is no act or word or thought that can be just their own, at least not as it, manifests outwardly. it is always either, reinforcing or besmirching the insane, sociopath iconography that men have made out of women. I think Lynch probably got that better, got that more right than any other filmmaker I've ever seen, maybe any other artist. To see how much of the cosmic evil that we have allowed into this world is built on one or another form of male possessiveness, male jealousy, male violence, either in the male mind to, keep what you've already got, to prevent yourself from getting fucked over, or to take what it is you want, or to recognize the divergence between the icon and the real person, and then instead of saying, well, I guess the icon's fucking wrong and crazy, taking that out on the real person. And for all the Lynch movies that are frightening and sometimes disgusting, and the ones that work sometimes a little more like horror movies, like Lost Highway, to me, the hardest Lynch film to watch will always be Fire Walk with Me, because he has the David Lynch sense of imagery and how to externalize things visually that in a bad movie they would just say them out loud. It's not realist in the sense of realism being an artistic genre. It is absolutely more real than any realist film about this fucking subject, about the horrible, horrible way that a young woman past a certain age has everything taken from her and then leased back to her on the condition of behaving a certain way. And there's a scene that, I'm sorry, sometimes I mix up the movie and the series. I think it must have been the series, because the other girl was Laura Flynn Boyle, where she and Laura Palmer go to One-Eyed Jack's, right? And get fucked up. And then Laura Flynn Boyle ends up kind of flirting with the idea that maybe she would take, money to fuck this guy. And if things worked the way we tell ourselves they work, Laura Palmer would be like, yeah, sure, it's no big deal, whatever. And instead, the vehemence with which she says, no, get the fuck out of here, this life is not for you, is one of the most heartbreaking things ever put on film to me, because it's not just the mountain of horrible things that have happened to this young woman. It is that they are so constant, so oppressive, so, in her mind anyway, impossible to escape or turn away from, that she will warn her friend away from doing that, right? Because her friend isn't broken yet. Her friend isn't stained yet. Whereas in Laura's own mind, she is already filth because of things that have been done to her, not because of things she did. In Laura's mind, she is already the kind of girl who's probably going to end up dead in very grisly conditions, because the way she has been violated has turned her into disposable human trash. Not even currency, right? Just garbage. And that moment, God, that fucks me up bad. To see a person who has been abused into, on some level, believing that the abuse was, if not deserved, then, foreordained, at least. destined. Because, and when someone asks you this question in real life, it's pretty fucking hard to answer. If the reason I get abused is not that there's something wrong with me, why does it keep happening? Why is it that everywhere I go, every situation I end up in, some version of the same atrocity is perpetrated upon me? What else could that be except that somehow I invite that? And I have known people personally who went real far down that rabbit hole, who after a certain point of abuse just could not, they had to have a reason, right? There had to be some kind of pattern in it. It's not just that, oh, you're the unluckiest girl in the world. So what else does that leave? Well, for some people, it leaves the thought, I guess I must be making this happen to myself. I guess I must be, at my core, just black bile and garbage. And other people must be able to look at me and see she has no heart. She has no brain. She has no soul. This is a disposable consumer good to be used as you please and then thrown the fuck away. And I first saw Firewalk with Me when I was young, like, I don't know, 14 or 15, and just didn't understand enough to have a strong reaction to it. But watching it again a couple years ago, now that I have known a lot more people who have been, a lot more women, I should say, who have been forced into something kindred to that situation. God damn, it's really hard for me to watch. I don't, turn off things because I can't look at them very often. But that is one several times I thought I might have to turn this off. I can't watch this happen to a person, especially having known people who have also suffered some version of this. And I think that is one of the huge factors that divides Lynch from anyone else that you might kind of vaguely associate with him or put loosely in a category with him. And I think, just personally, I think that is probably why his work has resonated with women for a long time in a way that a lot of other, avant-garde or whatever stuff doesn't. Because that theme of violent possessiveness and of the horrible crushing weight of projection on those people or those things, which are in the mind of the possessor, designed to be possessed. That is something you can find from the mildest degree, however mild that can be. It's never very fucking good. But from the mildest degree to the absolute utmost fatal, horrifying degree, if you spend much time getting to know, I have found anyway, maybe it's the people I know, but if you spend time getting to know really almost any woman at all, some version of that has happened to them. And Lynch was focused on that and willing to make very pointed statements about it in a way that, directors who are, well, I was going to say probably not awful people. At this point, I don't know if anyone in Hollywood is not an awful person, but people who are, in theory, on the right side of things, people who have all the right liberal politics, would never, ever approach that depth of a critique at the lowest foundational levels of American and maybe Western society that women are used, if they're lucky, as currency, and if they're not lucky, as something to throw in the furnace to keep it burning. And, I got into David Lynch when I was maybe 15 or 16, and then have rewatched pretty much everything in recent years. And suddenly I was seeing that everywhere, everywhere. And that is one of the things that has most stuck with me about him as an adult. And that, of course, is going to come up when I talk about Mulholland Drive and when I talk about Last Highway in ways you can probably imagine. Oh, I'm glad I just remembered this, though. All this shit is pretty heavy and pretty sad, and we've just lost a genius. So I hopefully am going to lighten the mood a bit, because I have a David Lynch story. This did not happen directly to me, but I know that it did happen, and I love this fucking story. So when I graduated college, my best friend moved to New York to work in film and TV production. And after bouncing around for a while, he eventually found his steadiest work making The Apprentice in 2012, maybe 2013. And this friend of mine, he has a very, very unself-conscious habit of singing when he's working on something or trying to concentrate. He does it like there's nobody there. And God love him, he does not have a standout voice, I would say, which is important to understand for this story. So one day, working on The Apprentice, he's walking down a hallway and he's singing Song to the Siren by Tim Buckley, which is a hard song to sing if you're really fucking good, right? And as far as he knows, he's alone in the hallway. And then in the middle of singing, he feels this huge hand clap his shoulder from behind, and a voice right up to his ear saying, I heard that. You've got a beautiful voice. You could be a professional. And my friend turned around, and it was Gary Busey, who apparently has horrible taste in singing. And my friend, being, a movie encyclopedia, said, "Oh, well, thank you. That song was actually in one of my favorite movies, Lost Highway, and you were in that too. What was it like making a movie with David Lynch?" And Gary Busey said, David is out there. I mean, I'm out there, right? But David is out there. The whole time we're making that film, he was wearing like a baseball cap or like a hat you'd wear to go play golf in, right? Except the bill of the cap was like 1.5 feet long. So you couldn't stand right in front of him because you just smack your face against the bill of the cap, right? He was always wearing that hat, and he always had a yellow legal pad that he was always writing stuff down on, right? And I assumed they were notes for the movie and things to try differently and, maybe shooting schedules, that kind of thing. So one day, I show up early to work. I'm the first guy on call. David's the only one there, right? And I said, "So, David, what are we doing today?" And he looked at me silently, and a tear rolled down his cheek. And then he screamed, "I don't know," and ran away crying. But when he ran away, he dropped his little, yellow legal pad. And I picked it up thinking maybe there'd be instructions for what to do that day. And the whole thing that he'd been writing in this whole time. It was all just little pictures of animals and stuff. I love that fucking story. Not to do a belabored, full circle thing here, but I think that sort of, it brings me back to the thing I was talking about admiring in Lynch, in both the courage and the generosity of his imagination being presented unmediated, unironically, unfiltered. That, yes, there is a place for irony in certain kinds of art, but when you are making something that you want to be as good as goddamn possible, I want to see you try to make it as good as goddamn possible and not win any fucking cheat points by giving pitchfork writers hooks that are easy to write about but that have absolutely nothing to goddamn do with music. And seeing Lynch for the first time, seeing Eraserhead for the first time, was very much like hearing and reading about Fugazi and realizing we can just do this. Holy shit, we can just do this. And that, to me, along with all the specific beauties of his work, remains one of the most hopeful things about David Lynch, is that especially with the way filmmaking technology has changed, you can just do it. If you have an Eraserhead in you, stop trying to fucking sell it to someone. Stop trying to fucking get, a meeting at Netflix. Make it. Just go make the fucking thing. It'll probably be better anyway. And once that kind of vision is exposed, right, other people are going to jump on it. Don't wait for permission to do this shit. Do what David Lynch did. Open up the right side of your brain. Open the flap in front of your imagination and let that shit blast like a fire hose, because there is no, never was no, and never will be no substitute for a culture of artists in absolute sincerity, trying to follow through as best they can on the things they see when they're not quite asleep, they're not quite awake, and it feels like a secondary eyelid has fallen like a camera filter over their eyes, so that everything familiar becomes strange and everything strange becomes stranger.